G'day humans, Chris Stead here. Today I'm reviewing the Microsoft Surface Pro 11th Gen. This is the 2024 edition. Let's jump in. Now, over the years, the Surface has established itself as one of the better two-in-one solutions on the market, and mostly because it provides that flexibility of a Windows 11 experience in a tablet form. Now, with the 2024 edition, which is the 11th edition of the Surface Pro, there's been some notable changes, some big differences here on what we've seen on previous models. Now, namely, for the first time, we're getting an OLED screen, or at least in some variants. I'll go into that a little bit more, but they get an OLED screen. It's Windows ARM operating system, so it's working on Windows. It's the ARM version of Windows. It is running on this device. It's got CoPilot, the CoPilot key right here. So this is the first of the generation that's part of that kind of post-CoPilot AI revolution that we're seeing across a lot of the laptops in the market at the moment. And it's using the Snapdragon X Elite CPU processor. And Wi-Fi 7 is also one of the additional features we're seeing here, but those top four that I mentioned are kind of the big variants, which is separating this from what we saw with the previous variants of the Surface Pro. Now, what this is supposed to mean is we're going to get like mobile-like battery length, but the power of a good laptop. So, do we get it? Does it work? Let's jump in with my Surface Pro 11th Gen Edition review. And we'll start with the price because, hey, that's the most important thing, right? And it's kind of really interesting when you look at the pricing on this particular device because, like I said, some of the big enhancements here are the arrival of the OLED screen. But that only occurs on one variant of the Surface Pro. So you can get a Snapdragon X Plus processor variant, and that's going to bring with it and just the old LCD screen that we've seen in the previous years. So it's still 13 inches, still touch screen, it's still offering 120 Hertz, it's still 10-point multi-touch, all that kind of cool stuff going on. It's just LCD, it's not OLED. Now, if you spend a little bit more coin, you can upgrade to a Snapdragon X Elite CPU. And from the benchmarks that I've been seeing floating around the internet, there's about a 15% kick on power over the X Plus. But then you also get the OLED screen, so you're going to get those richer blacks and that premium OLED experience from the screen. So that is kind of the difference you're going to get. So obviously a better experience is going to cost you more money. And so if you get the base model of the Snapdragon X Plus with LCD variant here in Australia, it's going to cost you $18.99. And when I say the base model, that's 16 gigabytes of DDR5X RAM, and M2, NVMe, PCIe, SSD at 256 gigabytes. So that's $18.99. All right, and you can upgrade to 32 gigabytes of RAM, and you can upgrade to 512 or 1 terabyte hard drive spaces. Obviously, the cost is going to go up. Although, from what I've seen online, that's where the discounts can be found in the higher models. The base model tends to not get any price discounts, but if you look a bit higher, then you also tend to get discounts on those, so that's interesting. Now, if you get the base model of the Snapdragon X Elite version with the OLED screen, that's going to set you back to $699 here in Australia, and that is going to be for the base model of that variant, which is the 16 gigabytes of RAM again, but a 512 gigabyte hard drive. And again, you can bump those up if you want to. So that's the pricing you can expect to pay. Now, here's the kicker. That only gives you this, the tablet. So even though it's a two-in-one, it's actually sold as just a tablet. Obviously you can Bluetooth a keyboard to this, but if you actually want the new keyboard, which is the new Flex keyboard, that's going to cost you here in Australia over $700. That's with the stylus, to be fair, or the pen, but yeah, it's a lot of extra money to get the bespoke organic keyboard experience. If you want to get the non-Flex, so the Flex is the new keyboard, and the thing that it really does is it's wireless. So basically you can unplug it like so, leave it over here, have it like that, and type away, and it's going to work. Whereas the original or the last gen version of the keyboard, which you can still get for about somewhere, I think it's $450 here in Australia with the pen, or $309 without the pen, just for the keyboard, then you can't do the wireless. And they've also changed the buttons around a bit better. I'll go into that a little bit more when we see the performance of and the experience of using this particular device, but the keys are theoretically a bit better to type on. So that's just something to keep in mind with the way that this device, the Surface Pro, is priced, in that it looks like this in all the imagery you'll see and on all the storefronts and everything. It looks like this, and there's a price, but that price does not include the keyboard. And as I'll go into as we get closer to my overall opinion and verdict on this device, I don't think that's cool. I think that considering it's selling itself as a 2-in-1 device, it should come with the keyboard, but we'll get into that a little bit more in a sec. But for now, let's just have a look at a broader overview of the specs that you're going to get in the 11th generation of the Microsoft Surface Pro. So as mentioned, depending on which version you get, you're going to get the X Plus, which is the 10-core model with the LCD display, or you're going to get the X Elite, which is 12-core with the OLED display. Now on top of that, it's got an NPU, so that's your AI chip basically. So the Qualcomm Hexagon with 45 trillion operations per second, and it's got an integrated graphics card. So it's got the Qualcomm Adreno GPU, which is integrated into the Snapdragon X Elite, and I'll go a little bit more into that as we get into performance, because it does well, a lot better than you'd expect from an integrated GPU. Now, as mentioned, the RAM is DDR5X, so a little bit, it's a bit better than your standard DDR5, and you can get that in 16 or 32 GB variants. And as I mentioned, it's the Gen 4 NVMe SSDs with the 3 options, 256, 512, or 1 TB, depending on which model you get. So regardless of whether you get the LCD or the OLED, it's 13-inch touchscreen Pixel Sense Flow display. The resolution's 2880 by 1920. It's 267 ppi, so that's pixels per inch. It's got the taller screen, so the 3:2 aspect ratio. Contrast ratio, this is with the OLED, sits at 1 million to 1. You get the dynamic refresh rate up to 120 Hz, which is solid. Dolby Vision support. I'll go into the ports and everything a little bit more in detail, but you do get 2 USB-C 4.0 ports. So 4.0, that's going to be able to charge. You should be able to charge through USB, but you also be able to double that as a display port if you want to connect it to a monitor. Wi-Fi 7, so the latest in Wi-Fi there, and it's also got Bluetooth 5.4 technology, so again, that's good. Love the weight, 895 grams. That's one of the big things with this, is that it's got that portability. It's very good as a travel device, or if you're moving back and forth from work a lot or on the go. That's where this thing can really shine, and that 895 grams definitely plays into that. And I'm going to go into this in detail in a bit, but 14 hours is the advertised battery life, with fast charging if you have a 65-watt power supply. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the design of the laptop. Now, obviously, depending on where you come in your purchase, you may not have all of this, but let's just assume that you do. So we'll start with the tablet side of things. And look, it's pretty minimalist. I actually really like this color. It's called Sapphire Blue, but there are different types of colors that you can choose. Now, one of the things you'll notice straight away is that there's not too much in the way of ports. So we've got 2 USB-Cs over here, and they're both on the left. And I would have liked to see 3, to be honest. I would have liked to have seen another one over here on the right-hand side. And the reason why it's good to have one on the right and one on the left is just depending on where the power might be coming from. Also, depending on where your mouse hand is. So if you want to use a mouse with this as opposed to the touchpad, then this can get in your way if you're left-handed, and you just want to have those options available to you. So I would have liked to have seen another USB-C over here, but you do have 2 USB-C 4s on this side. Then we've just got basically the power button, some volume up here, and some connection ports down here which go into that. And other than that, it's pretty minimalist and very light, as I mentioned before, quite light. Now, the kickstand on the back is really solid. So it's pretty robust. You don't get much movement out of this. It's really quite still, and you can obviously change it to whatever steepness you would like. So they've done a really good job with that. I think it's very simple design. They haven't overcomplicated it, and it works well. The only problem is that does not sit on your lap very well at all. You can kind of balance it like that, but not really. So it's important to, I think, note that the fact that you might want to use this as a laptop, it's not very good to use on your lap. You kind of need a table experience such as this in order to get the most out of it. Now with the screen, there is a camera up in here. There's a 1440p front-facing camera and then a 10 megapixel back-facing camera, so you can, take photos like you would in tablet, or you can do your webcams and everything like that. There's dual mics in here as well, but it does mean you get a pretty decent bezel. And so if you have a look around there, it's actually quite a lot of black around this otherwise excellent screen. So that's just another bit of a shame that there's such a border around that screen that could otherwise be screen. All right, now let's move on to the keypad, and I like how it folds up. So they've done a really good job with the design of it. So it does sit at, when you got it set up like so, it does kind of sit at a slight bit of an angle there. I don't know if you can see that, it's just slightly raised, so you get a slightly raised experience when you're typing like this. And then the pen fits in very flat so that you can basically just carry it like that. And it's really quite svelte and not taking up too much real estate and not adding too much weight. It's really quite nice the way that this has been designed. Now what's cool as well is that you can take it off, flip it, it's all magnetized, it goes straight on. Oh, so I'm trying to do this at a weird angle to get on camera. So, geez, there, like that. And then it will hold like that. So when using it in tablet form, like so, you don't have to have your fingers kind of hitting the keys. If it was around the other way, that's where the keys would be, but you can switch it around so the keys are facing in and it works perfectly fine as a case like so. So I think they've done a really good job with that side of things. With the actual keyboard experience, however, I'll just get it around the right way. I don't enjoy typing on this. It's kind of like a make-do in that you would, yes, I'm on the road and I don't want to take a heavy keyboard with me, so I'm going to use this thing. It's going to double as its cover, and then when it's not being a cover, it's going to fold down like a type on it. If you look at it like that, yeah, sure it works, but I actually find the buttons really hard to move between. It's just going to take a long time, I think, for me to adjust to the typing experience on this. It's very loud too. Like click, 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 click. So that's just something to consider. The touchpad's fine, it works really good, no worries there. But yeah, it's just that typing experience I actually found to be awkward on this particular keyboard compared to a standard laptop. And like I mentioned before, it also doesn't work on your lap too well. So I'm going to go a little bit about this when we get to my verdict. But yeah, it may not be a great tablet, it may not be a great laptop, but as a two-in-one, it does all right. So yeah, that's my issue with the keypad. It's just not that great to type on. And the stylus as well is really interesting because, a lot of people probably won't use this as much as I don't tend to use it that often, for example. But it's quite responsive on screen when you're doing notes, when you're typing notes, when you're drawing, when you're mucking around with Co-Creator, it's pretty good. But it just doesn't fit in your hand that comfortably because of this flat design. It's not traditional. It's basically like a worker's pencil. And it's designed like that, I suspect, so it can sit flat in there and then not hit the screen when it folds up. But the flip side of that, I guess, portability and functionality in terms of the way it sits in the design is that it's not as nice to hold as a traditional cylindrical pen. But it's also not the end of the world. It still works and does its thing. So at the top, I mentioned that kind of the goal of this particular device is to maximize battery life without compromising power. And in this regard, I'm really quite impressed by the Microsoft Surface Pro 11. It does a great job with the battery life. So the advertised 14-hour battery life that you'll see in all the marketing around this, from Microsoft around this particular Surface Pro is actually not far from being on the money. And usually sometimes you just you see the advertised battery life and then you use it and you're like, how did they ever get there? But on this, even when I was watching a lot of video, doing a lot of browsing, even playing games, I was getting good 12 hours out of it. So yeah, the point is whether you get between 10 or 14, I've read some people online reckon I can get even 15 off it. My experience is it definitely falls within that 10 to 14 no matter what you're doing. And that's like, it's all day. That's all you really need to take out of that, is that you're definitely getting all day battery life out of this. That's really impressive. But what's really cool is it's still super snappy, and there's no real downgrade in the performance as part of that. Even when you're not putting on battery saving mode, even if you're not putting the brightness down, if you're just using it like you want to, you're still getting those hours. And when I said about the snappiness, like interacting with the various apps, as long as I'll touch on this in a bit, as long as they're native app experiences, everything moves really fast, really quick. It's really responsive on the touch screen. It's really responsive on the keyboard. Going in and out of some of the more heftier apps, your DaVinci's, some of the video games I've been playing, the load time can be a bit significant. But once you're actually in there and actually using the devices, those kind of higher end stuff, it actually works pretty well. And in particular with gaming, I was quite impressed because I wasn't expecting much. It's not a games machine. It's not pitched as a games machine. It's not supposed to be a games machine. It's got integrated graphics card. Yet, when I was playing games through Steam, so as opposed to say Xbox, because you can just play through the cloud, and I did that as well, and it works fine other than your connection is the issue, not the actual laptop. But when I actually installed the games and ran them off the device, they actually played really well. So one of the test games that I like to use is Control, the Remedy game. It's just, I like the way that the HDR works on it and the lighting, and it's just kind of, it's not super top tier, but it's also not down the bottom when it comes to visuals and graphics and what it's pushing how it's pushing hardware. And a lot of the kind of 2-in-1s that I've tested, most recently I tested the Lenovo 9i, the YogaBook 9i, and Control chugged on that. And it's a much more expensive device. And then on this, played fine. And that was with high settings. So I put it up to high. I played dirt rally game super fast, like a racing game. Again, bumped it up to high. High was a bit of a chug on that game. Bumped it down to medium, perfect. So it's not a gaming device. So I wasn't expecting to get high on anything, but it actually performed really quite well. So that's something to take into account, no matter whether you're gaming or whether you're using high-end software, is that performance actually is pretty solid, and it doesn't make any sound. It doesn't get hot. It's not loud. The fans aren't cranking, which you can get on a lot of Windows 11 devices. So yeah, overall, impressed. And that's, like I said, I'm still getting 10 plus hours battery life. Now, the other thing is that the OLED display, so this is the OLED model. I should have pointed that out at the start. So this is the X Elite model with the 16 gig of RAM, 512 SSD, and the OLED screen. And it looks great. It's really sharp, it's really beautiful, it's really crisp and easy to read. The entertainment that I've watched on there, like Disney Plus at 4K, that kind of stuff, looks great. And even though it's not a very powerful speaker, the speakers in device are actually really quite solid. And you do get that kind of Dolby Atmos experience out of the speakers. So yeah, as an entertainment device, it's definitely good. And that's how you might use it quite a bit in tablet form. But then also being able to play games on it as well is kind of like an added bonus I really wasn't expecting. It's not all perfect though. There is obviously the issue, the fact that it's running on ARM, and not all of the apps that you may want to use are going to natively run on ARM. Now they'll run, most of them should run off the emulator okay, but there are some that won't even work off the emulator. So that's something to keep in mind. We should see, I think, more of the most widely used apps and experiences start to get better ARM support now that we're seeing laptops come out from, like this with Windows, and it's cool and it's good. So it's kind of like starting to happen. So we should see a movement there, but that's just something to know, is it's double check that there isn't some really vitally important piece of software that you want to run on this that isn't going to, because that'll definitely be very frustrating, I'm sure, if it was to happen to you. And the other thing is the AI side of things. So obviously everyone's pushing AI a lot at the moment. Microsoft has been working hand in hand with Snapdragon to kind of bring this CoPilot experience and this AI future forward in all of its devices, including the Surface Pro 11. But you know, it's just still so infantile. It's still really trying to find its feet. I find it too slow. You got obviously the button here, CoPilot, you go in there and talk to an AI, there's co-creator. There's various things that you can kind of fiddle around with and do. And it's fun, but it's still not quite out of being a gimmicky experience to being something that's like essential. So if you're looking to buy this because, wow, you want in-eye AI, then that's again probably not a compelling reason to move forward with this device on its own. Those are probably that and the fact that some of your apps might not work are probably the only two kind of real dents that I would say would impact the experience I've had with this in terms of its performance. There is no doubt that the Surface Pro 11 kicks more goals than it concedes. It's the best Surface yet, and it offers a Windows 11 two-in-one experience that delivers not only great battery life, but good performance and a beautiful OLED screen. But I can't give it like a full pass mark here. I find it frustrating that this is sold as a two-in-one device, but you don't get the keyboard with it, and it's such an added extra expense. I really, that just leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And the fact that kind of the full ARM app compatibility and the AI are still evolving concepts means Microsoft, you know, really isn't fully maximizing what it's selling you with this device. But it's still really quite a good machine. And I wouldn't say it's a great tablet and I wouldn't say it's a great laptop. However, it's in that sweet spot in between, and it's kind of, yeah, it's doing a pretty good job. It's kind of nailed it. So if that's you, if that's going to work for you, then by all means, I think you're going to be pretty impressed by what this device offers, especially with that portability that it gives to you and that lightweight. However, if you're looking for something that's more of a great laptop experience or a great tablet experience, or if you're just a bit scared off by some of the limitations you might discover dealing with Windows on ARM, then yeah, maybe you just want to hold off for one more generation and see where things go. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm Chris Stead. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to check out my other videos, and until next time, I'll check you later. You!